Now, here's a bite from Newton's apple.
Well, I'm interested in mummies, and I've got a question about them. I'd like to know how scientists study them and what sort of things they can learn.
Good question. A lot of people want to know that, I think. And here to answer that question is Dr. Derek Notman, a radiologist from the University of Minnesota. Dr. Notman, what can you tell us about techniques for studying mummies?
Ira, there are many techniques available today for studying ancient Egyptian mummies. I'd like you to meet an old friend of mine.
A very old friend of yours, I can see.
About 3,000 years. This is the Egyptian mummy from the Science Museum of Minnesota, and I'd like to tell you about what we can see from superficial inspection alone. Here we've dissected away some of the linen on the left side to show the dark leathery tissues underneath.
Wow.
We expose the surface of the skull here, which shows that this individual was shaved. We can see his teeth.
A good set of teeth, too.
Looks pretty good from what we can see there. Moving down a little bit, you can see the dark tissues on the chest wall, preserved, tough, leathery.
Yeah.
That's right.
And the hands, that's impressive. That's very impressive, because they look like they're still manicured.
They are. They look delicate.
Amazing.
The tissues are very well preserved there, and the fingers are slender. Putting all of these findings together makes us think that this individual is probably a priest.
No, he's not a working type person.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, that's what you can learn from a quick visual inspection.
Yes.
If you want to know more, you have to do an autopsy, right? Go inside and dig out.
That would result in the destruction of a valuable museum specimen and would be unacceptable.
No, okay, so what else can you do?
Well, we have alternatives. We can use x-rays, and I'd like to show you some x-rays of this mummy over here.
Oh, wow.
This is a full-body composite of the Science Museum mummy from head to foot, and you can see the bones of the chest, the ribs, the backbone, the pelvis, and the legs themselves. This is a very well-preserved Egyptian mummy.
This guy looks like he's in good shape. No broken bones, right?
X-rays like this are designed to tell us exactly bones. We can tell if there are bone tumors or perhaps bone infections. Unfortunately, most Egyptian mummies are not this well preserved, and we run into other problems. I'd like to show a few of these when we deal with Lady Tashat.
Lady Tasha.
Lady Tashat is the beautifully decorated Egyptian mummy from the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. And
she does not look like she's in such good shape. Look, she looks pretty broken up inside.
She is. She was smashed by grave robbers who plundered her tomb.
Really?
And resulting in ribs broken and scattered throughout the chest area along with a broken back.
And she looks like now this looks very weird because it looks like there's another head in it, like another skull right over here.
You're correct.
Really? There is one in there?
That is the skull of another individual, an adult male, and we think that when the grave robbers plundered the tomb, they destroyed not only Lady Tashat's mummy, but the mummy of this second individual. And when the damaged bodies were discovered by priests or family members, they were formally reburied, and the second skull was included with Lady Tashat's remains.
Now, with all this jumble of bones and organs in there, you probably can't tell very much by looking at an x-ray, right?
These packing materials obscure all the details of the skeleton, and it would be impossible to interpret these plain x-rays.
Is there anything else you can do then?
Fortunately, yes. Radiology has introduced a new technique over the last 10 years called computed tomography.
CAT scanning. They do it to people. They can do it to mummies, too?
Ancient mummies or living patients, we can scan them. I'd like to show you some pictures of this Science Museum mummy on the scanning table.
Ready to go right in there.
Ready to go into the donut-shaped scanning hole, and once the mummy is in the scanner, you get a computerized cross-sectional image of the mummy. I'd like to show you some of these scans right here. Let's start off at the level of the Science Museum mummy's teeth. Look at those fine teeth.
My teeth should look so good, I'll tell you.
This has told us a great deal about the individual.
You can tell something about the health, really?
Museum legend has it that this individual suffered from a dental abscess, and we see from the excellent condition of the teeth as well as the bones of the jaw that no such infection existed.
What else can you tell?
If we look at another picture of the head, we see a broken bone behind the nose, which shows the passage of a chisel, which was
boy.
rammed up rather crudely through the nose,
Is that how the mummy was killed?
not to kill the mummy, but to start embalming. And the chisel going up through the nose caused a hole in the bottom of the skull, and the brain was removed through the nostrils.
Well, that's how they embalm them. I get it. Now, what happens if you see something of particular interest and you want to go in for an even closer look?
We don't have to stop here. We have other techniques available, and in this case, we decided to go ahead and do fiber optic endoscopy. Let me show you.
We're familiar with that on this program.
That's
I didn't
right.
know you could do it on a mummy, though.
Well, you can. We started off with a small hole cut into the side of the chest cavity right here, and we removed a plug of the rib just large enough to introduce the flexible tubing of this endoscope. And inserting it through the hole in the chest wall, we could advance it into the chest cavity, and we actually took a videotape of this experiment.
Right in the chest cavity.
That's right. And the videotape shows the metal probe from the endoscope going in and wrestling with that tough leathery tissue, which turned out to be heart.
No kidding.
We took these samples to try to identify the tissues that we saw.
Was it diseased? Anything like
We could identify.
But what could you tell, from all these different techniques, what could you tell about people who lived in ancient Egypt then?
All these techniques have been very helpful, Ira, in that they tell us about the diseases which were present in ancient Egypt. And we know that the ancient Egyptians suffered from common lung infections like TB or parasitic infections or common fractures. And that hasn't changed much. They suffer from the same things today.
What about cancer? Anything like the kinds of diseases that we have?
There are very few examples of Egyptian mummies with cancer.
And I imagine now that you've got newer techniques, you'll be able to study more mummies and learn more about it.
The frontier is just opening to us with these new techniques.
This is truly fascinating. I want to thank you for coming, Dr. Notman, and sort of taking the wraps off of mummies for us.
It was my pleasure.
Newton's Apple is made possible by a grant from DuPont, makers of better things for better living, and also by this station and other public television stations.